Hey everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and I apologize in advance if you can hear my neighbor mowing the grass because I don't know why, but they all decided when Mary decided to put up the camera to record, it was a great time for like 3 people to mow their grass. So you're going to hear a mower, and there's not really much I can do about that. This is like the only time I have to actually record anything, so we're going to roll with it, and hopefully the mower is not too loud. But I am a little bit late with my September recap, and honestly, this should be a pretty quick recap for you guys because I don't have a whole ton of stuff to go through for the last half of September. I read the majority of the books for the month in the first half of the month, which I talked about in my mid-month recap. I read 10 books, and I'm not going to go over those in a lot of detail because I did a lot of detail with them in that first recap video. So if you haven't seen the first half of the month, then you can go back and watch that video and see what I thought about all 10 books I read. I actually had some really good books that I read for the first half of the month, so I started off with a bang, which is always a nice thing, and I had a few duds in there, but for the most part I had some really good books for the first half of the month. And then book 11 was by Sin I Rise Part 1 by Cora Reilly, which I also did a very in-depth video for you guys, which again I will link up here if you haven't already seen it, because I went into a lot of detail about my thoughts on that book. So that kind of gets us into really the last 4 books I read for September. And the reason why I say I read more books than 4, but the reason I'm only including like the 4 on here as new books is because the rest of the books I read was actually books I had already read before. I did a giant reread of like literally every single Cora Reilly Mafia book that I could find. And I'm going to talk about my thoughts rereading that series briefly at the end of this video, but just so that you guys know, the next 4 books are like new books to me, and then it's going to be me talking about my reread of Cora Reilly's beautiful Mafia books. So, as I said, book 11 was by Sin I Rise, Part 1 by Cora Reilly. Book 12 was called Once Upon a Summer. I'm looking at my notes. Once Upon a Summer by Teri Wilson. I gave this one 5 stars, and I loved this book. I put a picture of it on my Instagram. It is the cutest book ever. It's like a cheesy Hallmark movie in book form. It's also a clean romance. So if you're one of my friends that's like a Christian and doesn't like a lot of naughty bits and people banging in your books, then this is a good option. So this one is freaking adorable. So you have a real life prince. What country was he from? Did I put down what country he was from? I have no idea. There's a real life prince who's a widower, and he has a young daughter. I can't remember how young the daughter is. I think she's like 6. Yeah, she's 6 years old. And you know, she's getting ready to make her debut in like this some kind of royal event where she has to ride a horse, and he's feeling really lonely, and he's been a widower now for a couple of years, raising his daughter on his own, and he's obviously in line to the throne. His mother is queen, and he will be king when his mother passes. And so his daughter has just not been herself, and so he decides to take her to a theme park in the US in Florida, which we all know what theme park they're going to, but because, you know, rules and copyright and all that, they can't call it Disney World. So they call it, what do they call it? Hold on, let me see if I have it written down. I did not write down the name, but it was really cute. It was like Ever After Park, or I don't know. It was something like that. But we all know they're talking about Disney, right? Like, hello. And the girl in the book is actually playing a princess in the park. And she is like getting ready to age out of the princess role because she's like up in her 20s at this point. She has a fiance at the beginning of the book who's a total jerk. And the reason why she loves playing the princess is because she's had like past issues in her childhood, and she likes to bring happiness to other people. So she loves playing this princess role. And he's like, you know, if you're going to marry me, you're going to have to quit this and get a real job. And she's like, screw you, buddy. Not in those words. It's a clean romance. There's no big cuss words. But anyway, she's like, absolutely not. I love being a princess. And long story short, she dumps him. They break up. And the prince, his little daughter is obsessed with this, fairy tale princess world. So he ends up buying the princess for a weekend or a week or I don't know, something like that. And so the princess has been hired to take his daughter around the park, and that's how they meet. And they fall in love. And it's so cute. It's the cutest book I have ever, it's one of those, if you need something just lighthearted and fun and super cute and sweet, this is the book. I loved it. I'm like, y'all need to turn this into a Hallmark movie, because I would totally watch it. Actually, I think this author has a few books that have been turned into Hallmark movies. It's super cute, guys. I recommend it. 5 stars. Loved it. Book 13 for the month was Roman by Sophie Lark. This is book number 3 in her Underworld series, and I ended up really liking this one as well. I gave it 4 stars. It is an enemies to lovers romance. So you have, obviously, the guy in the book is Roman. The girl in the book, I can't remember her name, what's her name? I didn't write down her name. Oh, Mia. Sorry, Mia is the girl in the book. And so basically he bullied her back in school and they couldn't stand each other. Well, here she is as an adult. She is going to Paris to work for some kind of newspaper type, I think it's a newspaper. And they have her write an article about a man who's opening a new casino in Paris, and he has ties to the mafia. So she decides to they put her on the case, and they decide, and she finds out that it's Roman, and this is the guy who bullied her all through school, but they're obviously both grown up. They're instantly attracted to each other. There's this whole subplot of another casino owner who's trying to keep this casino from opening, and then Roman grew up in the Bratva, but he doesn't want to be part of the mafia world anymore, so he's made this promise to, was it his father? Promised to somebody that he was going to try to turn the business legal. So he has a half sister that he's working with, and they're trying to turn their branch of the Bratva into more legal stuff. So they're turning to gambling and casinos rather than drug pushing and things like that. And I actually really liked this one. It's definitely an enemies to lovers type thing. And I really enjoyed this book. I'm really loving the Underworld series so far because the books are not very long. They're usually pretty short, and the romances are hit quick. So it's just, they're not long, they're not complicated. It's pretty simple plots, but the characters are really good and really well written, and it draws you in. So it's one of those books where I have a free Saturday and I just want to blow through a nice romance novel, and I really am enjoying Sophie's Underworld series. So I'm recording this kind of late into the month. I've actually read another book in the series already, and it's the same thing. These are just nice short mafia romances that are not overly complicated, but are really well written. So if you haven't checked out the Underworld series, you need to. I don't even remember how many books are in this series, but this was book 3. I did book 4 in October, which I'll talk about in my October recap, but I'm really liking it so far. Book number 14 was Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks, and I don't even remember how long ago this book was written. I don't know if it's a newer one or an older one. Don't know, because Maya Banks has been writing forever, but I usually don't like Scottish romance at all. Look, I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. Outlander, I don't do men in kilts. It's not my thing, but I know that Jen from the book Refuge has talked about this book several times, and one of the things I know about Jen is that usually if she likes a book, I also like it. I get a ton of recommendations from Jen. I also get a ton of recommendations from Jess from Peace Love Books. Those are my 2 go-to people for recommendations. If they like a book, I'm probably going to also like a book, and if they hate a book, I'm probably also going to hate the book. Their reading tastes are just very similar to me. So after I saw her mention this book in a couple of videos, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to check it out. It's on audiobook on Hoopla, and I went ahead and just listen to the audiobook while I'm pulling reports today. And you guys, I love this book. It's a 5-star book. So obviously it takes place in the Scotland, Highlands, people with kilts. I usually could give 3 poops about that. But basically the story is you have these 2 fighting clans. You have the Montgomerys, and I can't remember the name of the other clan. I'm terrible with remembering names. But anyway, the 2 clans are fighting, and basically the king is you all need to stop fighting, so we're going to marry you guys to each other. So in order to keep the guys from fighting, I'm going to take the son from this clan and the daughter from this clan. Y'all are going to get married, and y'all are going to be at peace with each other and stop fighting over stupid stuff. So they are super freaked out. At least her family is. It's, what's her name? Evelyn and Graham, and her family's freaked out because she is considered to be touched in the head. So they think that she's like slow, and obviously back in the day they didn't quite know what some of the stuff was, so they would just refer to her as touched in the head. And so he goes into this marriage thinking like, I'm never going to have a normal marriage because this woman is not all there, basically, and he just resigns himself to, you know, this loveless marriage where he's going to have to take care of this woman who's not quite all there. But what they don't realize is that she is 100% fully there. She's deaf, and nobody had realized in all this time that she's not stupid. She's not, you know, got issues. She just can't hear you. And so the funny thing though is that there's something about the tone of Graham's voice that she can actually hear him, not like actually hear, but she can like feel the vibration of his voice. And so she's immediately intrigued by him and wants to be around him because for the first time since she lost her hearing, she can understand him. The other thing that the people in her clan did not realize is that she has taught herself to read lips. So she can't talk to you and she can't hear you, but she has learned to read lips from other people. So she knows what's going on. She just can't necessarily communicate that back to you. So long story short, in this book, you have Graham who figures out after several, you know, things that go on in the book, he finds out that like she's not stupid, she's not daft, she's not touched in the head, she literally just can't hear you, but she's actually perfectly smart. She's in this book had so many like ups and downs, and watching how the two of them came together into this relationship and overcame some of the past hurts that happened to her and to him and to everybody. I really loved this book. Totally recommend it. And if you're like me and you're like, I don't do men in kilts, I would recommend this because I actually really loved this book. So this was a 5-star book for me. And then the last book kind of goes along with my Cora Reilly reread. So my number 15 for the month was Bound by the Past, which is a second book about Dante and Valentina. And I gave this one 5 stars, you guys. So I don't know how I missed this. I do know how I missed this, truthfully. I read Cora Reilly's Born in Blood series back in the fall of 2020. It was when I first, and then after that, like I was a goner and I just kept reading Mafia romance, and I'm obsessed with Mafia romance now. But, I read this series back in 2020, and at the time that I read the series, the last book was Bound by Love. I think it was the second Luca and Aria book, and I did not know that this book existed. So when I was doing the reread, I was like, oh my goodness, there's a second Dante and Valentina book that I didn't even know existed. So this book is really cool because it looks at everything from Dante's point of view. So when you read the first Dante and Valentina book, which is Bound by Duty, everything is from Valentina's point of view. What's really cool about this one is you get his point of view and why he's the way he is. You get a little bit of his childhood, you get a little bit of his first marriage, you get his relationship with his sister, you get him meeting Valentina, you kind of get the years in between. But the part of the book that really, really like intrigued me and just absolutely blew my mind was you get Dante and the outfit's point of view of Twisted Pride. So those of you who have been on my channel for a while know my absolute favorite book from the Camorra Chronicles is Twisted Pride, which is the story of Serafina and Remo, however you say his name. And that's been my favorite book for, ever since I read it. And I've reread that book. I can't even count how many times I've reread that book, but this is that book from the other side. And what I loved about it is, kind of what's going on from the viewpoint of Serafina and what's going on from the Camorra's point of view, but you don't fully understand the depth of pain that this put her family through. Not only because we know when we're reading Twisted Pride that Ramo's not really hurting her, right? Like we know that he's playing a mind game. He's not actually hurting Serafina. But then you see it from Dante and Valentina's book, this Bound by the Past, and they're devastated because they really do think that she's being hurt. And then when they get like the bloody sheets in the box and they think, oh my God, she's being raped, and like just the amount of despair and like, oh my God, horror and all this stuff that they're going through. And then also seeing that moment when she, and these are spoilers if you haven't read the series, so I apologize if you haven't, but when she decides to choose Ramo and not go back to the family and to take the children away, and how that affects Dante and how that affects his relationship with his family and how that affects how the other members of the outfit see him, and that causes, tension, and how he has to work back because his sister blames him. You didn't fight for our daughter and you sent him off with this crazy man to Las Vegas, and just seeing the whole twisted pride point of view from the other side was super intriguing. And I have to say that Dante and Valentina are really my favorite couple of the Born in Blood, the whole Born in Blood series. So with that being said, after I read By Sin I Rise, I did the complete read through of Born in Blood Mafia series, and that was a new book for me. But just in the second read through, because I did a whole book on the Camorra Chronicles, I reread the Camorra Chronicles as well. Loved them. But I'm just going to kind of give you guys some thoughts on my second read through, right? So I reread also the 2 standalones, so I'll start with those. The first one I reread obviously was Sweet Temptation, which is the story of Julia and Cassio. I still love this book. It's super cute. It's a great introduction to the mafia world. So if you're new to Cora Reilly and you don't know if you want to take on an entire series, this is a good one to get into it. I loved this book, still do. It's super cute. Great book. Fragile Longing, second time through, I didn't like it any better than I liked it the first time around. I'm sorry. I don't love the story of Sophia and Danilo. It's okay. It's not bad, but I kind of have this feeling that Sophia kind of comes across as like second best, and she's always in Serafina's shadow, and the family's never really gotten over Serafina being taken away. So I don't know. It's not my favorite book. It's not bad, but I just feel like it maybe could have been a little bit better, but that's my opinion. And then my reread of Born in Blood, I'm going to be honest with you guys when I say that I don't know that I love the Scuderi sisters. So Arya in the first book is super naive and makes some dumb decisions that have an effect on Luca that I don't know. In both of the Arya and Luca books, I'm like, she's married to the capo of the New York Mafia. Why does she think she can do these things and there's no like repercussions for that? I don't know. I think she's kind of dumb a little bit. Very naive and kind of dumb. Sorry, that's my thoughts. Gianna, I think, is kind of bratty. I'm hurting people's feelings right now. I'm sorry if I am. Gianna, I just think, is kind of bratty in the book. Again, you were raised in the mafia. What makes you think you're going to get away with this stuff? I don't know. And then Lily and Romero's book, I understand that they love each other. It's a sweet book. And I actually, out of all the sisters, I think I like her the best. But I also think that, and I mentioned this the first time I read the books, that like their decision to be together hurts a lot of people. And while I understand wanting to be with the person you love, I also feel like they cause so much heartache for the people around them by deciding to be together that I don't know that I can really condone the decision they made. So I don't love them. And then Dante and Valentina are by far my favorite couple of the whole series. I loved both of their books. And then Kara and Grell's book I actually liked. It's very underrated. People don't talk about it very much. But I think the reason why it's kind of an oddity is because I don't know that it really fits with the series that it's in, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. It kind of almost feels like that book should have been the last book of the Born in Blood series because it works as an introduction, or maybe like a standalone. It would have been great as a standalone maybe, because it's more of like a introduction to the Falcones more than anything else. So I feel like maybe that would have been like a prequel to the Camorra Chronicles or a standalone. I don't know if it really works as part of the Born in Blood series. That's my opinion, but I like the book. I just don't know that it fits in the series. And then, of course, I read through the Cora Chronicles again. Now, I have read the 3 books in the middle, Twisted Emotions, Twisted Pride, and Twisted Bonds. I don't know how many times. I think I reread one of those books probably once a month. Those are my 3 favorite books of all time from Cora Reilly, especially Twisted Pride. I think I have the thing memorized at this point. I could probably quote it to you. Don't ask me, though, because I probably could. Love them. And I haven't really read Fabiano's book a second time. I finally reread it the second time. I liked it better the second time. I think it works as a really good introduction to the series, and I liked seeing Fabiano and how he kind of turned into who he is. So I loved that book. And then, I hate to say this too, but Adamo's book the second time around was a lot better too. I do think that the first time I read it, maybe my expectations for him were too high. That I went in there like we waited for the baby brother of the Falcone family's book, and I think I went in with my expectations too high. But I didn't really like Savio's book the second time around, which is Twisted Hearts. So the first time I went through, I thought it was adorable, childhood crush, and then he finally notices you, because how many of us had the childhood crush when we were like 12, and I love him and I'm going to marry him, but you actually aren't, because that's life. So I think I loved it the first time around, but the second time around, I'm kind of like, I don't know that I really love Savio's character. I get the whole arrogant thing, and that's like his mask, right? Like he's arrogant because he's putting on a show, but he comes across as like a man whore in the book, very much so. So I don't know that I loved his book as much the second time around, but it's still a good book. So anyways, the 3 in the middle, kind of, Twisted Emotions, Twisted Pride, Twisted Bonds, are like my golden Cora Chronicle books. And I actually do really like Twisted Cravings the second time around better than I did the first time around. I don't hate it as much as I did. So that was my September. So I ended up reading a lot of books, but the last, I don't know, week and a half of September was rereading all of the Cora Reilly books. So it wasn't really anything new to you guys. So anyways, that was my September. Let me know what you guys read in September. What was the favorite book that you read the entire month? What is your number 1 favorite book that you read in all of September? All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Bye.